Are live for the first round recap of the 153rd Open Championship. Just wrapped up. I believe everyone is now off the course. I know the broadcast went off the air about an hour ago, but I believe everyone is either done or pretty much done. So feel good about starting our round one recap, which started last night for us here in the West Coast. It's always fun to watch that golf early or late, depending on if you're staying up late or getting up early. Always a fun week. It's like I was talking about yesterday in the preview show. It's just it makes it's a little bit different. You get to watch it at a different time of day, and it's especially the different style of golf too. It's very fun to watch, and it's very enjoyable, and it's one of the many reasons why the Open Championship is obviously it's very important, one of the best tournaments of the year, but it's also it's such a thrill to watch. It's an enjoyable watch when you get to see that different style of golf that we don't get to see on a week-to-week basis, and we also get to see some guys that we don't get to see on a week-to-week basis, and we see that at the top of the leaderboard, which we'll go over here in just a minute, just blasting all of this out to social media. Of course, if you've been watching these before, chat participation, it's always welcome here on these streams. If you're just feeling like, I'm just going to watch and tune in, that's totally fine too. But if you have any thoughts, comments, any shots that you saw from today, or anything that you feel like is worth chatting about, just pop it right into the chat section, and you're more than welcome to be a part of the show. We've had some fun conversations throughout the first three majors in recapping things, and been able to go back and forth with you guys that watch, and it's been really fun. So we'll do it one more time, at least for the major season. Still have some more tournaments we'll be doing live streams from or about coming up in the next couple of months. But let's focus today on the first round of the Open Championship. It is complete. We have a tie for the lead. It is a 5-player tie for the lead at 4 under. 67s were shot by Jacob Skov Olesen, Haotong Li, Matt Fitzpatrick, Christian Bezuidenhout, and Harris English. So a pretty eclectic group at the top at 4 under. And they all kind of did it in different ways-ish, I would say. For the most part, you're seeing a lot of really great putting and good approach shots, but Matt Fitzpatrick had the big hole out on 16, and that kind of skewed his shots gained around the green. But I mean, it's a big swing there, because as you saw throughout the first round, I mean, it's calamity corner for a reason. And I mean, you could lose balls on the right side. You can very easily go down to the right and take 4 or 5. But for Fitzpatrick to hole in for that 2, and that's a big shot. That could be one of those shots that we look back on Sunday and go, wow, that's one of the shots of the tournament, despite it taking place on Thursday. Taking a look at some more of the leaderboard. Matthew Jordan is at 3 under, tied for 6th with Scotty Scheffler, Saddam Kaukanjana, and Tyrrell Hatton. They are all at 3 under. Saddam, a lot of talk on the broadcast about how he's a monk, and that seems to be the only fact that they have for Saddam Kaukanjana at 3 under. Nikolai Højgaard, Lee Westwood, Ricky Fowler, Rasmus Højgaard, Aaron Rai, Brian Harman, Maverick McNeely, Justin Rose, Lucas Glover, and Tom Kim, all at 2 under par. They are tied for 10th. Going over some other notable names, Phil Mickelson is at 1 under. Sam Burns also 1 under. John Rahm, Shane Lowry, Zach Johnson. How about Sergio Garcia, Joaquin Niemann, Rory McIlroy, Tony Finau, and Justin Leonard are part of a larger group, tied for 20th, all at 1 under par. How about that? You've got Phil Mickelson and Justin Leonard, 3 shots off the lead, which is pretty remarkable stuff from those guys. Looking further down the leaderboard, defending champion Xander Schauffele is even par. Let's see, any other big names? You got Sungjae Im and Robert McIntyre at even. Cam Smith had he went off early this morning, hit one of the worst tee shots you'll see on the first hole, just a complete duck hook, rallied back to shoot 72. He somehow only made bogey on 1. But he went off early this morning. Tom McKibbin's at 1 over. Let's see, any other interesting names? Adam Scott 1 over as well. Keegan Bradley wrapped up a little while ago. He's at 1 over. Same thing with Russell Henley. These are all tied for 45th at 1 over. Patrick Cantlay and Dustin Johnson, Jason Day, JJ Spawn at 2 over par. Let's see. And Jordan Spieth got himself down to 2 over, a couple of birdies coming in. He went out in 40, came in at 33. So Jordan Spieth at least able to hover around the cut line. Victor Hovland, Ludwig Oberg, Tommy Fleetwood, who was a big pick. A lot of guys were picking Tommy Fleetwood to win. He's only at 2 over, just 6 shots back, but he'll need a lot of ground to make up over the next couple of days. Got Cam Young at 3 over, tied for 98th. Hideki Matsuyama. And, I mean, we could keep going down the list, but that's about where I'd like to stop for now, at least going down the leaderboard. Actually, one more. Bryson DeChambeau, 7 over, a birdieless 78 today. Tied 144, which is way down the bottom of the leaderboard. Just a couple of guys are below him. So probably one of the more shocking rounds of the day is actually that how things went for DeChambeau, but just didn't have it at all with anything today. All the way around, just didn't have it putting, didn't have it short game off the tee. It was just kind of a mess out there for DeChambeau, but that's what happens in the Open. And we've seen that from Bryson time and time again, but we'll have to see. He'll have some scrambling to do to make the cut. He'll have to shoot maybe the round of the tournament just to make the cut tomorrow. As cut line probabilities right now, 1 over, Data Golf has that at about a 14% chance. 2 over is 38.5%, and 3 over is 34.5%. So you're looking at somewhere around there, that 2 to 3, maybe 4 over, but I'm guessing it'll stay somewhere around that 2 to 3 over, at least for the cut line. Top 70 and ties make the cut at the Open. Okay, where do we begin today? Because, when you're looking at the leaderboard, a lot of people were talking about the weather and you want to be in the right wave. Well, the morning wave, it actually played almost a stroke and a half harder than it did in the afternoon wave. Morning wave played 2.68 over par. Afternoon wave played just 1.3 over par. Back 9 was definitely harder than the front. Overall today, the front 9 played 3/4 of a stroke over par. Back 9 nearly 1.3 strokes over par. Saw a couple of the hardest holes on the golf course out there. Hardest hole for today is the par 4 11th. Just 9 birdies today. But then the 12th ended up being the easiest hole, where there were 5 eagles and 58 birdies. The 12th being the 532-yard par 5. But as far as when you look at the leaderboard, you're going, there's a healthy mixture of players from all the waves, right? Jacob Skov Olesen and Hao Tong Lee, they got out pretty early, posted a number. But then you have guys like Harris English, who played pretty late. Christian Bezuidenhout as well played late in the day, and they're still posting numbers. So unique that you see such a mixture. And then there were guys like Matthew Jordan and Scotty Scheffler, 1 shot back. They were kind of in the middle of the group. So it doesn't, and when you look at the waves, like I just mentioned, with the afternoon wave playing a lot easier than the morning wave, you would think there would be more of those afternoon guys at the top, but it's really a mixed bag of not just stars and maybe some European tour guys that are regulars there, but it's just a mixture of waves. And that's going to make tomorrow very compelling to see, is there going to be a major difference from morning to afternoon wave, or are we just going to continue to see just the best guys this week play at their best, regardless of when they're teeing off? As far as on the leaderboard, let's start with Matt Fitzpatrick. Still just 30 years old. Feels like he's been out for a long time, winning the U.S. Open in 2022. He's been on the Ryder Cup 3 times, 2016, 2021, and 2023. Trying to make it this year. It looks like he's going to have to be a captain's pick. He's still pretty far down on the European team's points list. And he had a couple of good quotes today talking about, he said that he had a good all-around day today. And then he talked a little bit about the adjustments that he's made coming into the Open and the last couple of months, and the fact that, where his lowest point was. He was asked directly, what was the low point? Because his previous question was talking about some of those low points, and Fitzpatrick said that the Players was really bad in the Valero Open. He said he couldn't find the face with the ball, but the Players, he really specifically pointed out, was the low point of the year. And not just the low point of the year, he said that's the lowest that he felt in his career. He also said that statistically it could have been the worst, and he just didn't feel good and know where the ball was going to be going, and talked about how the RBC is where things turned around for him. Now, it's interesting that he mentions the RBC because he finishes T38 at the RBC Heritage. Then the next week misses the cut at the Zurich Classic. But since then, you can definitely see he's been playing a lot better. T28 at the Truist Championship, which was the next event he played. T8 at the PGA. T31 at the Memorial. A T38 at the U.S. Open. But then he's come back with a Travelers finish of T17 and back-to-back top 10s with a T8 at the Rocket Classic and a T4 last week at the Scottish Open. For what it's worth, at the Players and the Valero, he missed the cut in both of those events. So it's good to see him come back, and it's interesting to hear that insight, especially because of how Fitzpatrick carries himself in such a different way on the golf course. He's one of those guys where, it's pretty well documented that he writes down every single shot. And he talked about that today, about how being an analytical player, he feels like it's easier. And he says, quote, in a way, it makes it kind of easier because I know what I need to do during the lull. My driving had actually improved this year compared to last year, so that was fine. But putting and chipping were off. You could argue I probably spent a bit too much time looking for my game rather than working on that. And he also went on to say, I didn't feel like that part of it was far away. I just wasn't necessarily worrying about that. So it's interesting because it's also well documented that he chips left-hand low, which is pretty uncommon to chip that way. And that's one of the telltale signs that someone is really struggling, is when they're chipping cross-handed. That's almost like a last resort type of thing. But it's fascinating to hear him say that because he is so deep into those analytics, he feels more comfortable knowing exactly what is his strength, which has been off the tee. He's driven the ball very well, but also his weaknesses, and definitely short game and putting, have not been up to par in those events where he's missing cuts or failing to finish inside the top 10 or top 20. For the most part, he's gaining strokes around the green and gaining strokes putting. Last week at the Scottish Open, he gained a stroke and 3/4 putting. So definitely that work is paying off for Matt Fitzpatrick, who knows how to win in those circumstances. And you go back to the 2022 US Open. I mean, he was fighting off Scotty Scheffler and Will Zalatoris. And he had that incredible shot on 18, which everybody remembers. But I mean, that round was, it was up for grabs. It was anyone's championship. There were, Zalatoris, Scheffler, Hideki had a low round that thrusted him up into the mix, shot 65. You have Rory McIlroy out on the course, Colin Morikawa breathing down your neck. I mean, that's a pretty stacked top five. Those were all the guys that finished top five, by the way. So you have about as heavy hitter as it gets, and he's trying to win his very first major, and he got it done with one of the great shots that we've seen in major championship history. So he knows how to do it. It's just a matter of, can he do it? And that'll be the question over the next 3 days. Is, has he found the consistency for a day, or has he found it for a couple of months? And then perhaps he's making a run at making the Ryder Cup team again. I'm sure that would mean a lot to him. I know it would mean a lot to him to make the Ryder Cup team for what would be then his fourth time. And he's pretty successful playing in Europe. He's won 8 times on the Euro Tour, so he knows how to get it done. And obviously last week he played well. I think he was one of those sneaky picks that some people going into it thought he'd be one of those guys you might make some money on if you were into the gambling business. And he's showing it at least for today, getting himself into a good round there with 67. And yeah, the highlight of the day is that chip in on 16, but eagling 2, bogeyed 3, birdied 6, and birdied 12. Took care of business on some holes that he should have, and that's how you get it done. Even though he didn't have the best putting day, putting wise, he only gained 0.87 strokes gained putting, which out of the guys in the lead, that is not even close to, that's dead last for sure out of the leaders, at least, because everyone else in the lead gained at least 2 strokes putting. So he got it done in a different way, and he did a great job tee to green, gaining strokes, gained over 5 strokes there. So, hey, we'll see what Matt Fitzpatrick has coming down the stretch. Harris English is another guy that we've seen hang around quite a bit, but he's been in the Ryder Cup once in 2021. He's won a handful of times on the PGA Tour. Been in the mix with some majors, finished T2 at the PGA Championship, shot 65 in the final round to get himself there. Had a solo 3rd finish at the US Open in 2021, solo 4th in 2020. So he's put himself in contention, but at the Open Championship, there's really nothing to show for. His best finish at the Open comes all the way back in 2013 when he finished tied for 15th. So not really an impressive resume as far as Harris English in the Open goes. However, he's had a pretty good year this year, and it's why he's right around the Ryder Cup rankings for Team USA to make it perhaps as an automatic qualifier, maybe as a captain's pick. Right now he sits 10th in the rankings there. So obviously if he wins, he's going to make it, he's going to automatically qualify. He'll have enough points, but he's been playing some good golf lately too. T22 at the Scottish Open, T4 at the Travelers, had a T2, like I mentioned, at the PGA, T12 at the Memorial, T11 at the Truist, 1 at the Farmers Insurance Open. So he's had a really steady year, and it seems like it's kind of what Harris English does. He plays good golf. Maybe he goes a little bit undetected at times, and then puts together some pretty good finishes, especially the last 5 years. He finishes in the top around the top 10 or around the top 20 more times than not. So it's not surprising to see him there. It's just a little bit surprising to see him at the Open putting together this kind of round. But, he's a guy that he hits the ball pretty accurate for the most part. Good putter. That's what you need here. And with how dry it is, distance isn't everything. You can get away with that at links golf because, ball's going to run a lot more. It's more about precision, being good around the green, making sure that your putting is well. And you look at the stats for all of the guys that played well today, almost every single one of them, they did one of two things. They either putted exceptional or they were very accurate in their approach shots or around the green. It's some sort of mixture of two of the three, if not all three of those stats. So yeah, like I said, a really good round for Harris English, getting himself in the mix. And then you've got a guy like Christiaan Bezuidenhout, who, he hasn't really been in this kind of spot. He's made a couple of President's Cup teams. But you look at his major resume, best finish came at the U.S. Open, a T12, just a month ago. Everything else, like at the Open, his best finish is T49 2 years ago. He's made the cut 3 times, missed the cut twice. This is his 6th Open, of course. Kind of unexpected. Had a really rough stretch of golf where he missed 4 or 5 cuts. And the one cut that he made was at the RBC Heritage, ended up finishing T42. But Charles Schwab, T16, U.S. Open, T12, and Scottish Open, T13. Other than that, you go all the way back to February where he finished T4 at the Phoenix Open. And even then, he still finished 8 shots behind Thomas Dietrich, who really ran away with that championship. But kind of a surprise to see Bezuidenhout. But again, he's a guy who drives the ball very accurate, putts really well, has a good short game, doesn't drive it all that far, but as long as you're accurate, and we'll get to Scotty Scheffler here in a minute because a lot of people were talking about, Scheffler didn't drive the ball all that well. It's not always the case. Yeah, he might not have hit every single fairway. I think he only hit 3 fairways, but he wasn't, like, how far off was he from the fairway? Not a whole lot. And he was able to make it work. So driving accuracy, because Scheffler went 3 of 14 today, but he hit it a lot better than that. And we'll go into his quote in just a minute, but just want to run down the rest of the leaders. Jacob Skov Olesen, he's been out on the DP World Tour. Not a very well-known name. If you watch DP World Tour golf, yes, I do like to tune into that. You've seen him in the top 10 of rounds pretty frequently. He won the amateur championship last year, played in the Open, finished T60, so made the cut in his first and only major championship appearance in his young career. He's still just 26 years old, which I guess nowadays is like an older rookie because he is a rookie on the European Tour. He got through final qualifying in the fall. But he's had a couple of top 10s, 3 top 10s on the Euro Tour, including a T7 at the Joburg Open, and then followed that up a month later at the China Open with a T8, but missed the cut in the last 2 events and has put it together today. I think it would be shocking if he ends up hanging around the leaderboard, the top of the leaderboard, I would say, this week. But I mean, who knows? This is you get that sometimes out of these guys where maybe they're used to playing in some tough conditions, or they fly under the radar and then they come up out of nowhere. And I mean, you never know. The Open has produced those kinds of winners before, where for a week you catch lightning in a bottle and you end up being champion golfer of the year. So Jacob Skov Olesen able to get himself tied for the lead. And then how about Haotong Li? That's a name, if you're going, where does that name sound familiar? Well, 2017 Open Championship, he finished solo third to Jordan Spieth and Matt Kuchar. He went nuts on the final day, shot 63. And for a while, it looked like there was a chance he might get into a playoff before Spieth and Kuchar kind of separated themselves. But he's been out on the Euro Tour. He won at the Commercial Bank Qatar Masters earlier this year. I believe was in the final group, if I remember right, in the China Open. Ended up coming home T4 there in his home Open, but had a good stretch right around there where finished a T9 at the Singapore Classic, T4 at the China Open, a T2 at the Turkish Open, and a T4 at the Sudal Open. So he's been playing some pretty good golf this year, and as I mentioned, he won a tournament in February as well. It's just cool to see a name like that reappear after not hearing from him for a long time. He hasn't played in an Open since 2022. The last cut he made was the 2020 PGA Championship. And Haotong Li, he did it today by going bogey-free. Not going to hear a whole lot of bogey-free rounds at Royal Portrush to begin with, and then to do it under these circumstances in the Open. And he was in the early wave. He was one of the first groups off, so he didn't get the full effect of the wind as we saw later on today. But hey, how about Haotong Li rounding out the leaders? So let's drop down to guys a shot back. Scotty Scheffler, as I mentioned, only hit 3 fairways. However, he talked about that today, and it was actually the first thing that he talked about in his press conference. First question is, you might not have hit as many fairways as you wanted to hit, but you must be pleased with that score. And his response is, yeah, you're the second guy that's mentioned that to me. I actually thought I drove it pretty good. I don't know what you guys are seeing. When it's raining sideways, it's actually, believe it or not that easy to get the ball in the fairway. Thank you guys all for pointing that out. But he pretty much goes on to say that he felt like he hit it really well off the tee. And it goes back to what Tiger's caddy Steve Williams would say in his book, Together We Roared. Just got done listening to that. Could not recommend that book anymore. Him and Evan Priest did such a great job. And one of the things that Steve talked about when he was caddying for Tigers, he would write down his own statistics. And this is back before you had ShotLink and Top Tracer and all this data out here that you could really soak up. He wrote down his own statistics, and there would be times where maybe they're aiming for the right side of the fairway and maybe even the first cut of the rough. And if Tiger ended up there, it actually was a good shot because maybe there's trouble on the left, or the angle is significantly worse on the left side than the right, or, whatever the case may be. And same thing for greens and regulations. So sometimes those stats can be a little, with how binary they are, whether it's made fairway or not, that doesn't tell the full story. And that's the same thing what happened with Scotty today is, yeah, he didn't necessarily have his best stuff off the tee if you look at fairways hit, but it's not like he was wild and putting himself into a lot of troubled areas. Made up a lot of strokes gained, approach gained over 4 strokes there, but he hit the ball really well, and that's what Scotty does. He is so good hitting the ball. It's just a matter of how will his putter treat him. Will he be able to have a consistent putter all 4 rounds? Because you need that at the Open, especially at a place like Portrush where, these greens are, they can put your brain in a pretzel. And that's one of the beauties of this golf course. And Scotty was able to handle it today, but can he do that for the next 54 holes? If there's a guy who can figure it out, it is Scotty Scheffler. But don't let that driver accuracy stat fool you. He didn't hit it as wild, and he admitted it too. And I was thinking that before he said it. I was watching him earlier in the morning, and it just kind of surprised me that he only hit 3 fairways. I was kind of taken aback when I was looking at the stats getting ready, going, oh wow, I didn't realize he missed that many fairways, because it didn't seem like he played that bad. But no, he was able to handle it pretty nicely. Matthew Jordan, another one of these DP World Tour guys that you might not recognize unless you're, a sicko that watches a lot of either Euro Tour, or if you watch a lot of Open Championship golf, because he's finished tied for 10th the last two Opens, 2023 and 2024. So, and last year he ended up shooting 20, let's see, I think it was last year, right? Last year he ended up shooting 4 rounds of even par, 71, 71, 71, 71. And if you're a fan of the shotgun start, they talk about how he only shoots between like 68 or 69 and 73 and 74. That's pretty true. His scoring average is like high 70s, which even furthers that point. He's never too low, but he's also never too high. Pretty eddy, steady, which this might be the perfect week for that kind of really steady play. If you can just shoot 70, 70, 70, 68, that could get the job done. You might not have to have the hero round, and getting some work done in round 1 to set yourself up for the week and the weekend, which we've talked about all year long. It's just such a relief because you're not chasing as hard. Tyrrell Hatton, it seems like the Open would be a place where he would win a major. He's coming close, if not the best player that doesn't have a major to his name, and he finds himself one shot back. I think this is a great opportunity for Tyrrell Hatton to take advantage of getting himself right in the mix and trying to check off that box of finally winning a major. He sits 4th right now in the European team rankings. So regardless of him winning this week or not, I think this is going to secure him on points. Unless he has a colossal blow up, which I don't see happening, I think he'll be comfortably in on points for the Ryder Cup. Had a T4 at the U.S. Open last month, had a really great opportunity, it looked like, to perhaps swoop in and steal and claim that elusive major championship. Had a tough break on 17, if you recall, on that brutal downslope on 17 on Sunday. But then the next week had a T5 in Dallas, and then in Spain, not a good week, T23. But, again, one of these guys that he's had an up and down career playing at the Open, finished T6 at the 2019 Open Championship, at T5 in 2016, but he's also had some missed cuts, missed the cut last year at the Open Championship at T20 a couple of years ago. But again, one of these guys that doesn't pound the crap out of the ball, but is pretty accurate, crafty around the greens, good with the putter in his hand. That could be the formula for Tyrrell Hatton to finally getting that major championship that I think would do wonders for his career, because he has pretty much everything else. He's won on the PGA Tour. He's won on LIV. He's won a lot on the DP World Tour. He's been a part of winning Ryder Cup teams. He's looking to be a part of a winning Ryder Cup team on foreign soil this year with Team Europe. If he could add a major championship to that as well, not only would that be big for him, but I'm sure a lot of fans of LIV would take a look and say, this is a guy that going to LIV perhaps has benefited him. Now, there are other guys who I think it's hurt, but there are guys that it's helped out. And he's one of those guys where he's, for whatever reason, it's freed him up, and he's gone from, being a nice player, a proper player, one of those guys that you can count on to play pretty well, but maybe not launch himself into superstardom, to being one of the 10 best players in the world right now. 10, maybe top 15. Hasn't had as many great finishes this year as he did last year, but he's still in the conversation. If you were to put him at, if you were to do a rankings and say he's 10th best player in the world, it's hard to argue against that. So Tyrrell Hatton, once again, in the mix here at the majors. another player who is one of the best players to not win a major, Lee Westwood. How about this? He is sitting at 2 under par. Big group. The Højgaard twins are there, which I think I'm rooting for them to be paired together on Saturday or Sunday. I think that would be really cool. I think as golf fans and obviously being part of the golf media, I got to do a better job of appreciating, and I tried to appreciate what they've been doing, but twins to be playing as well as they have, you don't see that in sports, really. It's very rarely do you see a guy, two guys, or even girls on the in female sports where they're both playing really well. Now, Nikolai's had a little bit better of a year than Rasmus, but I mean, here they are. They're both sitting 2 shots off the lead, but we'll get to them in a little bit. Lee Westwood, 11-time Ryder Cupper. I don't think he'll be a 12-time Ryder Cupper this year, but this is completely unexpected. Finished tied 25th at the Senior PGA Championship. Only one top 10 this year on LIV, which was tied for 10th at LIV Virginia. Hasn't played in a major since, at least hasn't played in a non-senior major since the 2022 Open, where he finished T34. So he's played a couple of these senior majors, played the U.S. Senior Open last year, and then, as I mentioned, Senior PGA. And here he is at 2 under. I think that would probably be, I mean, you look at everybody in the top 20, what would be the best storyline right now? And realistically, he's got a chance, I think. I mean, we've seen older guys win the Open Championship before, not in their 50s, because Lee Westwood's 52. But we've seen that, when you use that wiseness and all of those lessons and experiences that you've learned in the past, that can sometimes overpower, the power and the youth movement that we've seen in golf. I mean, hey, he's got a chance, right? He actually lost a stroke and a half putting, which is pretty crazy to think that he left some meat on the bone out on the course. Who knows? Went out in 33, was at 4 under at one point. And then a pair of bogeys on 14 and 16 dropped him down to a 2 under 69. But hey, anything's possible at the Open. And like I said, experience sometimes is the most valuable trait that champion golfer of the year can have. And hey, who knows? But you look at storylines, I think it's real. It's not as realistic as, some of the other players that have a chance. Like Scotty Scheffler, according to Data Golf, has a 24% probability of winning. Matt Fitzpatrick, Harris English, Tyrrell Hatton. Obviously, those are the guys that have pretty realistic chance of winning. Jon Rahm also, who's down at 1 under. But hey, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Lee Westwood or even Phil Mickelson, who's at 1 under, on the first page of the leaderboard come Sunday, just due to that experience that they have. Phil, of course, having an Open under his belt. Had it not been for Henrik Stenson, would have had a second Open in 2016. And Lee Westwood's come close a couple of times. One of the best players that's never won a major. And here he is sitting top 10. I'm going to be curious to watch him tomorrow and see how does he respond after today. The Højgaards at 2 under. You've got Ricky Fowler. I don't know what to expect out of Ricky Fowler. I mean, just surprising that he's at 2 under, but hey, credit to him for playing well. I think it might be weird to say, but I think I'd be more surprised to see Ricky Fowler in the top 10 on Sunday than I would like Lee Westwood. I don't know. I don't see it with Ricky continuing, but hey, that's the beauty of this game. if you have it for a week and you get, especially with the Open, you get the right draw, you never know what could happen. But there's Rickie sitting at 2 under. Aaron Rai, really good player, really rock solid player. Another one of these guys that could play his way into the European team. He sits 15th right now in those standings, but I think even if he doesn't win this week, and if he can put together a good rest of the PGA Tour year, he could very easily play himself into the conversation for being one of the captain's picks. He would need to win this week, or he'd probably have to win twice if he wanted to automatically qualify for Team Europe. Brian Harman, winner 2 years ago at the Open Championship, gets his way around in 2 under. Mav McNeely at 2 under. Justin Rose, how about a bogey-free 69 at 2 under? We talked about, Hao Tong Lee having a bogey-free round of 4 under, but 2 birdies, 16 pars for Justin Rose. And again, turning back the clock is Rosie, and him and Lucas Glover at 2 under. Nice to see Tom Kim playing well. He putted exceptionally well today, gained over 5 strokes putting. But Rose is another one of those guys where it would be a great storyline if he finishes well inside the top 5. We saw him, I believe it was last year at the Open. Let me go back. Yeah, last year at the Open, he was in contention, ended up finishing tied for second behind Xander and tied with Billy Horschel. He's got a knack for playing well in the clutch situations, but can he close it out in the final round? That's where things have gone sideways for him. But man, that'd be another cool storyline to see if Justin Rose were able to get it done. And we talked about this at the Masters. It feels like he should have at least maybe 2 or 3 majors. He's that talented, but they don't give him out because of talent. You have to go out there and win them. And unfortunately for Rose, he's gone out and lost more than he has won. Phil Mickelson had an awesome bunker shot earlier in the round. I believe, if I remember right, I think it was on the 3rd hole. It was early in the morning, and he holed out, dumped his second shot in the bunker again, steps up for his third, and just hits this monster bunker shot, and it zips off to the left into the hole. Just a super cool vintage Phil shot. Just one of those where you're like, man, watching him with the wedge in his hand it's remarkable. It's timeless. And it always is great to see what Phil can do. And that's why he's Phil the Thrill. Even into his 50s, he's still getting it done. Jon Rahm, 1 under, a popular pick. He was my backup pick. I ended up going with Rory, who's also at 1 under. But Jon Rahm in the mix to get himself 3/4 of the way to the completing the career Grand Slam. And the only one that he would be missing is the PGA Championship, which, it's the way how they pick PGA Championship courses, you would think one of those would play right into his hand. And he's talented enough to where he certainly is capable of being a career Grand Slam winner. This week could be the week for Rahm. Course fits very well for him. Didn't have his best stuff today, and I think that's scary for the rest of the field going into tomorrow. And Shane Lowry, of course, won here in 2019, also at 1 under. A couple of other guys, Zach Johnson and Sergio Garcia at 1 under. And then let's talk a little bit about Justin Leonard. Went out in 34, came in 36, shoots 70. I didn't even realize he was playing this week. I forgot that he was teeing it up, because you never know with guys as they get into their 50s, do the past champions play or not. we saw Todd Hamilton move it around last year. for content's sake, it's unfortunate he's not in the field because that was hilarious to watch. But how about Justin Leonard getting around at under par? And I think it would be cool to see him make the cut. It's like we talked about. We talked about it at the Masters, and last year we saw guys like Vijay Singh and Jose Maria Olazabal make the cut, and it's cool to see the players from a previous generation make the cut and still, bring what is now their A game and just play for 4 rounds. So really cool to see that Justin Leonard, who won the Open in 1997, the year I was born. I was just a couple of months old when Justin Leonard won his Open championship at Royal Troon. Of course, had the big putt at the Ryder Cup as well. The putt heard around the world. That No Laying Up did a great deep dive on the Brookline feud. If you want to go back and if you want to find that, I would highly recommend listening to that. It's quite amusing, and I'm shocked that and I'm wondering if anyone's brought up Brookline this week. It seems like it always gets brought up, or if not this week, it certainly will at the Ryder Cup. Because Xander Schauffele, defending champion, his dad said he's not going to attend the Ryder Cup this year because I think the quote was the crowds are going to be too mean, or whatever that means. But Xander's in at even par. Little bit of work to do if he wants to defend his title. I think you're going to have to see guys below 1 under have to really start to go out tomorrow and get it. Because we've talked about this in previous majors. You want to do the work early. You want Sunday to be as laborless as possible, because the more you're chasing on Sunday, the harder those shots become, and you start to force shots that you might not typically do. And I mean, we saw it, like Jon Rahm is a perfect example. Had to come from behind on Sunday at the PGA Championship, tied for the lead, but had to push because he knew Scottie Scheffler was coming, and it ended up costing him a couple of shots late. And ultimately, Scottie's victory was a little bit of a wider margin of victory than it really was. But that's because he was able to cruise. He afforded himself a couple of mistakes, whereas Jon Rahm or Bryson DeChambeau or some of the other guys that were chasing and in the mix on Sunday, they had no room for error. You want a little room for error because it's already hard enough to win a major. There's already so much pressure. Why make it harder on yourself? So, with the cut line being around 2 or 3 over, I think I don't see a lot of guys from down there making a charge up. If you are, it's going to have to be, I think, tomorrow, because I do think there's scoring opportunities out there, as we've seen on both the front and back nines, especially on the front, playing about half a stroke better than the back, half a stroke easier, I should say. But the opportunities are there for someone to make a run at it. I just think that if you're below that even par mark, and even at even, you need to start making some hay now. Otherwise, championship might be over for you. Let's see. Harris English. One last thing about Harris. Caddy not there. He was arrested like 30 years ago, and there was a new law changed to where he's not welcome in the country. So Harris English, not only is he having to try and win a major championship, which would be his first, he's got to do it with a completely new caddy. So he talked a little bit today about how he's trying to go through some of those hurdles, and that's pretty much half of his press conference today was talking about how unique this week is going with the new caddy. So he's worked with his caddy before. He said he's worked about 11 and 12 years on his putting and short game with him. And and with his coach and then his caddy, he was able to. He's been acclimated with. It's just such a weird thing, the situation of having to try and figure out all these caddies, and then he was going to have a caddy, and then Davis Thompson got into the Open, so this guy Joe Eder wasn't able to caddy for him, and so he's had to go with this coach that he's been working with on his putting and short game for over a decade. It's just a unique situation for Harris English to have to deal with. So maybe look for that as the week goes on. If he's in a pressure-packed situation, could that affect him at some point? Who knows? But as it stands, worked out okay for the first 18 holes as he is in a 5-way tie for fourth. Okay. Anything else we need to clean up here before we sign off for the afternoon? That about does it. Like I said, hardest hole on the golf course, the 11th hole. 4 played extremely tough, only 10 birdies today on the 4th. 11 played 4/10 of a stroke over par. Then you go to the 12th hole where it played 0.35 strokes under par. Almost half of the field either making birdie or eagle on 12. 7 played under par as well. 3 eagles, 56 birdies on the par 5 7th. The 5th hole, which I didn't go over this in the preview show, so I'll just talk about it now. 5 and 16 are like 2 of my favorite holes on the golf course. I love those 2 holes. If I were there, I would be watching 5, and then I would figure out a way how to get all the way over to 16. I think those are the 2 most compelling holes. 2 eagles on 5, so you can eagle it, but you could also drive it over the green. Like Phil Mickelson, I was watching him earlier, hit a shot onto the green, his second shot. And I mean, you could tell he was a little anxious about, is this thing going to roll off the back of the green and out of bounds? Because there's not a whole lot of leeway back there. So I love that hole. I love the ability to possibly drive it onto the green, but I also love the high risk, high reward, because it could ruin your round, or it could help jumpstart your round and go from, depending on it's a tough start. 1, 3, and 4 all played at least 0.2 of a stroke over par or more. There's not a lot of birdies to be had on those holes. You can come back on the second, but there's an opportunity for you to eagle 2 of the first 5 holes. It's crazy to say that at an Open, but you can do that. And then 16, of course, Calamity Corner. Boy, we saw some calamity today on the 16th. Peacock had a stream where they showed the 6th and 16th holes on one stream, and I popped that on the other TV because I just wanted to see how are players playing 16, what kind of bounces are they getting, how is the wind affecting it, where are they aiming, where can you miss, where obviously can't miss right, but can you get away with missing it short? No one went. It seemed like, I don't remember a tee shot on 16 going over the green. Seemed like nobody had enough club. So those are the 2 interesting holes where you're probably not birdieing 16, but par is going to feel like a birdie. And then you look at 5 where you could make anything from a 2 to a 6 or a 7, and it's pretty easy to make both. So those are 2 holes that I really thoroughly enjoy. 14 is another great par 4 that if you play that hole well all week long, you're probably playing the rest of the course well, because that hole can really eat your lunch, especially around the green. Okay, let's end it there. Again, 5-way tie for the lead. And then you've got 4 players tied for 6th, a whole slew of guys tied for 10th at 2 under, an even larger group at 1 under tied for 20th. 31 players under par through the first round. So that does it for now. We will be back once again tomorrow afternoon at some point after round 2 concludes, we will know who made the cut, who did not make the cut. We'll see. Do we see a bigger change at the top of the leaderboard? Who's going to be leading after 36 holes? Who will be in those final couple of pairings? It's going to be another great day at the Open. Again, I talked about this yesterday. One of my favorite parts, at least being out here, is you get about an hour or two of watching golf late at night, go to bed, wake up early in the morning, and you can go right back into watching up until the afternoon. It's what makes the Open a little bit different in a good way for us here in the States, and should be another fun Friday. We'll be recapping it tomorrow in the afternoon. Follow us on X at YourESN or on Facebook, EliSportsNetwork.com, for when we are going live for these streams. And we've got a lot of golf coverage coming your way. The PNGA Men's Amateur Championship, covering that championship as well. That's round of 64 in the match play there, wrapping up pretty soon. Head over to our website for a recap on that. But as far as our recap goes for today, just under an hour. So we will see you later. Hope you have a great and safe Thursday and Friday. Enjoy the late night / early morning golf. We'll be back at it again to recap round 2.